Welcome to another episode of Game Changers for Government Contractors. I am your host, Michael LeJeune. And if you are brand new to the podcast, let me just give you a quick intro of who I am and what I do. I work with RSM Federal. We are one of the nation's leading government contracting and consulting firms. We help folks that are brand new to the market or been around in the market, they're struggling in the market, try to figure out how to get to that next level. We've helped our clients win over $14.5 billion in government contracts, worked with thousands and thousands of companies. So if you need help in the government contracting space, you are listening to the right podcast. So today I want to talk for a little bit, and I want to emphasize a little bit on how to find competitive pricing information. This is a question that we get quite a bit. And one of the reasons I want to focus on just talking a little bit about it is I don't want you to overthink this. You can go down the rabbit hole and waste a lot of time and energy and even money by obsessing over this topic here. And so I want to point you in a couple of quick directions to get some information and understand that ultimately, when you are working on your pricing and being competitive, a lot of this boils down to two things. One of it is historical data, and the second one is you just taking a shot at this and doing some things, right? And even then, no one's going to win 100% of the time. So you can hire a price to win consultant. You can hire experts that are out there, and they can only do so much. A lot of this boils down to things that you can and can't control, right? So you can control having the best price with the best margin and making sure you are as competitive as you can be. What you can't control is some third party coming in and underbidding you by 50% or more because they just want to win the contract and they don't care if they lose money. It happens. So you can only control so many factors in this. And if you go in with that mindset, I think that helps people understand this is a process. You're going to dial it in, and here are some tools that are going to help you. So one of the first things that I want to recommend is reverse engineering pricing through past contract awards. You can use USAspending.gov, you can use SAM.gov, FPDS.gov, maybe even use FOIA requests to request information about a contract. They're not going to give you the exact pricing or anything like that that's on it, but if you compare what's in USA Spending or SAM to a statement of work, that may help you reverse engineer the pricing. Like, how did they come up with that? And sometimes you don't even have to dig that deep. So sometimes it's as simple as looking at a contract, especially for products, where you can look at a product contract and say they bought 35 widgets at $100 a piece. So, okay, now I know that's what the government's buying that for, right? So that's one of the simple ways that you can look at it and understand that's how they're paying for something. Product world, it's a lot easier to reverse engineer a price in a product than it is on the service side, because on the service side, you don't know exactly what they are providing. You can see a description and look at the RFP and make some assumptions. But in those situations, you may have to use a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request, in order to understand more of what is in the RFP response, as I should say. And so those are some tools that you can use to reverse engineer pricing and get it as close as you can. And again, even if you FOIA somebody's proposal, there's going to be a lot of things that are redacted. Proprietary information is going to be redacted. Pricing is going to be redacted. So you're not going to get all of the breakdown of what their G&A and overhead and all that. So you're not going to get that. You're only going to understand what was the statement of work basically that they wrote to. How did they do that? And that may help you, because I've had one client call me up a while back and was like, man, we keep missing the price by a couple of $1,000,000. And one of the things that jumped out was, I said, well, it's how you are deciding to price it. And in this situation, what the client was doing is they were going with this gold standard. So if somebody said they needed this work done, they would look at it and say, well, how many FTEs would I give this? And let's say it was 20 FTEs is how they would do it in an ideal world, when their competitor was looking at it and saying, well, in an ideal world, you might use 20 FTEs, but I think you really only need 15 FTEs and maybe one or two part-timers. And for those that don't know, FTE, full-time employee, and then maybe you're using some part-time work. And so they were quoting less FTEs for the same work. and thus coming up with millions of dollars difference in their pricing. And so sometimes it's just understanding how your competitors are pricing that versus how you do it, and that helps you. So reverse engineering is number one. The next one here, this kind of goes a little bit with reverse engineering, but not so much. You don't even have to wait around for a proposal to drop to go look at GSA schedules. You can jump into GSA's e-library and you can look at people's GSA schedules and see what are they pricing things. Now, this assumes that the opportunity is coming out on GSA, but not necessarily. So GSA is their best rates. And so if you go and look at your competitors and see what is their best rate on GSA, that gives you an idea of what they're going to be quoting. Now, to be fair, understand that most people are not going to quote their GSA schedule rate. They're actually going to quote a discount on that rate. Is it a 2%? Is it a 5%? Is it a 10% discount? I don't know the answer to that, but they're often going to quote a discount. So again, we'll use a labor category here and say they're quoting $100 an hour for a person, and you say, oh, well, I'm going to do $99 an hour. Well, you may not be competitive with them. They may be doing $95 an hour when they do the quote. So just understand, because you see it on the GSA schedule doesn't mean that's the price they're going to quote. In fact, it almost always means it's going to be less than that. Not always, but it's almost always going to be less than that. So that's a way there to see, am I competitive with pricing based on what people have currently in their GSA schedule? The next one that you can look at is wage determinations in SAM.gov. There's a section to go in there and look at wage determinations and see what certain things cost. And then you can sit there and look at, okay, well, for this accountant, it's $55 an hour. Plus, if they are on certain contracts, there's certain benefits and different things. So it's another $4.50 an hour or whatever. And so now you know per city, because that looks at per city, what those things cost. Because it costs it's a very different cost to hire someone in El Paso, Texas to do a job than Fredericksburg, Virginia. It's a very different cost to do that. Cost of living, all those things. So you can't just look at your pricing and say, well, anytime I hire an accountant or anytime I hire a janitor, anytime I hire an IT person, I'm always going to pay them $85 an hour or whatever the number is, right? Depending on where they live, it's going to be different. And the government understands that, and they know that that's going to be factored into your proposal. But a lot of people look at this and don't understand that. And so they struggle when it gets to the pricing. So you need to understand what that is. And that one's probably more for people that are starting in the market. If you've been in the market for a while, you probably understand that one really well. But if you're brand new to the market, understanding how you're going to charge for an employee based on where they live and what's going on, that's a really big deal. And it needs to be factored into your pricing. So the last one here, and I know you're like, man, this has only been a few minutes in the podcast. This is a really quick one, Mike. Yeah, again, I don't want you to overthink this. The last one I want to talk about is getting supplier and subcontractor quotes. So as you are starting to put together your pricing, start to put together your pricing strategy, your RFP strategy, it's okay to go out there and get supplier and subcontractor quotes for things. Like, how much does this labor cost? How much do these parts or products cost? And you need to know that. And is there an opportunity on the supplier side or on the manufacturing side or whoever it is there an opportunity on that side to get discounts by guaranteeing quantity or discounts by signing some sort of agreement with them for exclusivity? Is there a way to lower those costs and things like that? So if you focus on getting all of this information and understanding how to quickly get your fingertips on the information for pricing, it's going to allow you to put together quotes faster, and it is going to allow you to price to win, where you don't want to be the lowest price all the time. You want to be the best value, unless it's LPTA, lowest price technically acceptable. But even in those situations where things are LPTA, there's often a client that will be a little bit more expensive, but because they have different values, maybe they're including shipping, there could be something that changes the game. So think about that for a moment. How many times have you been on Amazon or Walmart or some other website and seen the price of a product? Wayfair is another big one that does this all the time. And seen the price of a product and said, oh, well, it's cheaper to pay a little bit more because the other one includes shipping. And this really cheap one doesn't include shipping, and the shipping is outrageous. So there's ways where sometimes the quote is going to be a little bit more, but offer more value. And the government may pick that because of that situation. So pricing is really an art. It really is an art. And at the end of the day, like I said at the very beginning of the podcast, there's only so much that you can control. So if you remember that, stay focused on that and go through these tools and use them and understand how to get your information, you're going to be able to build your pricing much, much faster. The only other bonus category that I would look at here is, especially when you start getting into the labor side of this, you're going to need to understand your costs. If you don't understand your costs and the cost breakdown, what your wrap rate is, your fully burdened rate, all those things like that, if you don't understand what those numbers are, that is something that you need to sit down with whoever does your books, whether it's you or an accountant or whoever, and you need to understand that. There's several books on that topic. I can refer you to different people in the market that can help you understand your costs and how those breakdowns are. And as a bonus, a lot of times when you download an RFP, not all the time, there is a pricing section that has a breakout that wants to know your financial model, basically. And so you need to understand your financial model so that you can understand how you're going to look at the profitability on this. Because at the end of the day, as my partner Josh would say, it's not about the money, it's about the money. It's about you making money. You don't want to be losing money on a contract. You don't want to be in a situation where you have 3 to 5% profit and any mistake sinks your company. You don't want any of that. So be very, very careful about how you do that. And I think you will be just fine. So if you have any more questions about pricing, again, I know plenty of people that do this for a living. I don't, because I despise doing pricing, but I know a lot of people that do this for a living. So there's people I can refer you to if you have questions about it. We'll see you next episode.